In this video, we're going to see how to apply a lambda and then a function to a single column of a data frame, which, by the way, means we need to also make a lambda and a function. The data frame we already have, I've created it in a series of videos that precedes this, but a very straightforward data frame. So first of all, what is a lambda? What is a function? Let me draw you down to this very last bullet point here, which is we want to think about reusability. There's a rule in programming or a guideline called try or do not repeat yourself. So copy-paste is a really bad idea. It means that we have bloated code base. An analogy I give a lot is that I used to live in a large house. Now I live in a small apartment. My apartment takes me 55 minutes to clean from end to end. How long did the house take to clean? The house was probably 4 or 5 times the size of this apartment. I don't know how long the house took me to clean because I never finished. So the more carpet you have to vacuum, the longer it takes to vacuum. And the same can be said about source code. The less we have, the less it takes to maintain. So these things that we want to copy-paste, think about making a function out of them. And the nice thing about modern programming is that we have this concept of functional programming, which is where we can make a function and then pass the function to where the work needs to be done. Where prior to functional programming, we'd have a function and pass the work to it. We can certainly still do that with functional programming, but functional programming simply gives us another option. So a lambda is usually kind of a one-line unit of work. It's something very simple that we want to pass in. Where a function is something that's declared, it has a name, and it can be used, it can be called, it can be passed to a column, it can be used in multiple places. So let's jump in and take a look. I currently have this data set that has the health clinics in Cincinnati, and I've made an integer out of the close hour. So 700 is 7 o'clock on the nose. These are going to be kind of silly lambdas, but nonetheless, we get the idea. I'm just going to add a minute to the close time. Probably not something practical, but yeah, you get the idea. So let's look at this line very carefully. Let's look at what's to the right of the equal sign. We're talking to our data frame and we're selecting the close hour column. Now I did this with dot notation. You could use square brackets or anything else that you want. And then I choose apply. Apply is the magic word because it means we are going to pass either a lambda or a function to this column, and we want the function to operate on this column. Now it's going to transform the column somehow, but if we wish to save those results, we have to overwrite the value that's already in that column, which is what I'm doing here. Now the lambda itself, we start with the keyword lambda, and then we talk about the value that we're going to be working with. And in this case, the value that we're going to be working with is each unit of data within the close hour column, so 1 for each row. So for each of those, we're simply going to add 1, and then after that, let's print out the clinic data frame and confirm we got our results. We see, sure enough, the close hour has been incremented by effectively 1 minute or 500 to 501. So that's a nice case of an inline lambda, but now let's consider how we could define a function. So to define a function, we're going to start with the def keyword, and then we'll say, we'll call this one foo because it's kind of a silly function, and we'll pass in bar. I don't like using toy words a lot, but this is kind of a made-up example anyway. I'm going to, in this case, return bar plus 10. So take that incoming value, add 10 to it. Now, applying it is very similar to how we applied the lambda. But one subtle change is instead of passing in that word lambda, we simply pass in the name of the function. If you're not aware how functional programming works, that can be a little weird because you might be looking all over for a variable called foo, but indeed what this is referring to is the function up here that we've defined. So def, defining a function, the name foo, passing in the parameter bar, and then the colon says, okay, here's where the function starts, and then anything that's part of that function is indented. When we resume not being indented, that means the function is over. So if all works well here, I expect to see a 1. Let's make it a 2, just so we can very clearly identify it. If all works well here, I expect to see a 2 in the basically that middle column of the close hour. And sure enough, as I scroll to the right, you see that the close hour is 2. And it's kind of funny. My heart skipped a beat there for a second when I saw this one that had a 5 in it. Like, where'd that come from? Well, I remember this clinic actually closes at 3:30, and by adding 2 to it, we're making that 3 a 5, and then we already have the 1 there. So this has been a look at how to create a very simple lambda and a very simple function, and how to apply each of them to a single column in a data frame. I hope you found this video helpful, and I look forward to reading your feedback. Thank you.